Welcome to the Comparison Group Podcast, the podcast for people in the middle, the podcast for discussion and not debate. Listen anywhere you get your podcast. Thank you so much for the positive reaction to my wife's appearance on the show last episode. People seemed to enjoy that, enjoy the in-depth interview. Obviously, we were having some fun, but yes, every bit of what I said is true. She inspired me, prodded me for a year to do this podcast. She purchased all the equipment for me to do this podcast, and she has never listened to an episode of this podcast. That was very true, all true. So, okay, Amazon, the evil empire of the business world, according to some people. Now, let me say first, I'm going to do my best to stay neutral on the characterization of what Amazon is and what Amazon is not. Here's why. I can sit here and I can read and play all the negative comments about Amazon in the media, comments from former employees to whistleblowers. I can also read or play statements from Amazon about how great the company is and how highly ranked they are. Number 1 on the Harris poll for corporate reputation. Number 2 on Fortune's World Most Admired Companies. As usual, I have a problem with the media. If you go to a fulfillment center, an Amazon fulfillment center, with the intention of asking employees about the poor working conditions at Amazon, who do you think is going to want to talk to them? Talk to the media. People who aren't happy with Amazon. If you're the media and you go to talk to company spokespeople at Amazon, what do you think they're going to tell you? They're going to tell you how wonderful Amazon is. So, as usual, I have to try and cut through all the layers of that, of the public opinion, of the corporate spin, of the media simple-mindedness, I'll call it, and just use a little common sense to focus on what's important, what Amazon is not, and how unions may affect that. I will say this. I did find a website I was not familiar with, and I'm still not so familiar with it, so I'm not vouching for them. Maybe other people have heard of it. I'm always afraid when I point out a website or something that I found that I say, hey, this is interesting. I don't know if anybody else has heard of this. It's called TikTok. You know, you never know. There's stuff that's out there. You don't know about it, and you come to find it's been out there for years and everybody knows about it except for you. But this particular website, I don't know. It's called Career Bliss. And I guess you can type in and search a particular company, and the site will give you information about the company, about starting salaries for different positions. Also, people who work at the company can go on and leave comments about working for that company. They can tell you what it's like to work for that company, kind of give reviews. And so if you go on Career Bliss and type in Amazon, you'll see salary ranges for different jobs, and you'll also see employees who've left comments of what it's like to work for Amazon. As you would expect, some are good, some are bad. Some people say the pay is fine for the job that you're doing. Some people say they asked way too much for what they're paying. You get both. You get both positive and negative comments on that site. I thought that was interesting. Sorry if I sound a little weird this show. I think I'm coming down with a little bit of a cold. Uh-oh. So the big question here for this discussion, unions at Amazon in general, pro or con. Now, I can tell you, I'm left of center on politics. I'm right of center on unions. Now, before you say, doesn't this guy take a firm position on anything? Yes, I do. I don't need to see the new Channing Tatum movie to know it's going to be horrible. I can tell you 100% Cats Are Haunted. I can tell you 100% Taylor Swift is the greatest musical genius in history. So, yes, I do take firm positions. But with unions, I see the pros and the cons, particularly as they exist today. Now, the most common thing you hear from people who are pro-union without question, is unions built the middle class. I hear this over and over and over. Unions built the middle class. It was unions that built the middle class. One problem, it's not entirely true. What built the middle class as we define it, having disposable income, being able to afford a mortgage, a car payment, start a family, what made all that possible was consumerism, people buying things, creating demand, thereby creating jobs, economic activity. After World War II, when the greatest generation returned home, there was economic growth and investment by the government that all helped create economic activity. As this demand ramps up, demand for employees ramps up. If I'm a business owner, I'm not going to hire you unless I need you. Talked about this before. So the increased economic activity led to a labor demand, which led to the growth of unions. So think of it this way. If I get elected mayor of a struggling dirt poor city, what's the first thing I need to do to turn things around? Bring in unions? Heck no. I got to bring in business. I bring in business to bring in jobs. That brings in taxes and economic activity. Less people on assistance, more people working, earning a fair wage, we hope. This allows me to make more investment to bring in more business. Now we're booming. The majority of residents have been lifted out of poverty into the middle class, and there's a high demand for labor because there's so many businesses now, and here come the unions. So you see, the union is the result of the economic growth, not the catalyst. The middle class was essentially built, and then the unions came. It only makes sense. Unions exist to give labor collective bargaining power over business. So in order for that relationship to exist, you can't have broke people begging for a job. You have to have people who are essentially making money, making a decent living, who want to make a better living. So in essence, in order for the unions to even come about, there has to be a strong incentive for the business to even entertain the idea of a union. There has to be that desperate need for labor. Otherwise, why would the business even entertain the idea of a union getting in the front door? So it's the other way around. The middle class is there. As the labor demand strengthens, the union moves in. It's the other way around. And I know I'm contradicting a ton of super intelligent people who've been saying that for years, that unions built the middle class and not the other way around. But am I wrong? Well, let's look at this. There's a huge surge in the middle class in India and China right now. According to the World Bank, by 2030, over 70% of China's population could be in the middle class. You know what? Let me read some of this article to you, as a matter of fact. This article is entitled World Reimagined, The Rise of the Global Middle Class. It's from NASDAQ about a year ago, July 2021. It talks here about the definitional differences between what defines the middle class. But despite the definitional discrepancies, one area of common ground is that the size of the middle class will continue to grow and do so considerably over the current decade. Some forecasts put the global middle class at 5.3 billion people by 2030. And leading the charge in the coming middle class explosion will be China and India. What this means is that companies that once relied upon the U.S. and Europe for their bread and butter business will geographically pivot to meet the growing needs of this new middle class. According to the World Bank, by 2030, over 70% of China's population could be middle class, consuming nearly 10 trillion in goods and services. But India could be the world's largest middle class consumer market, surpassing both China and the U.S., with its sheer size in aggregate. What the math tells us is that by 2030, the middle class in India and China together will be spending more than the combined middle class spending in Europe and the U.S. So, middle class explosion expected in India and China. Now, do India and China have unions? The short answer for both is yes. Unions in China are like those employees must wash hands signs in public restrooms. You know they're only there for show. Right? The unions in China have no real power. In India, it's more complicated, way too complicated to get into here. But one thing is certain. This projected middle class growth in the two largest emerging economies is not being created by unions. Stronger unions that exist now, they may get stronger. They may be a byproduct of the middle class growth, but they're not driving the middle class growth in India or China. Stronger unions may even help to sustain it by giving people more disposable income. Stronger unions may even increase the economic activity by giving people more money to spend. So as I said, unions aren't all bad. I'm not saying unions have nothing to do with people having more disposable income to buy cars, refrigerators, TVs. No, it can help economic activity. I'm saying unions don't necessarily create the economic activity. So I think we just need to stop assuming in order to have a strong middle class, we have to have strong unions. When unions rose to their heights in the U.S. after World War II, America was the center of the universe in terms of demand. There was no other country even close in those decades. Those conditions don't exist here today. So when people just keep repeating unions built the middle class, it's like when I hear immigrants built this country. Okay, both statements may have some truth to them, but the conditions that existed then don't exist now. You can't just keep saying immigrants built this country as a reason to allow immigrants into the country. The country's built. You can't just keep saying unions built the middle class if the same conditions that existed then don't exist now. And clearly they do not. Number one, and most importantly, perhaps, there is way more global competition now than there was then. Let that sink in, because you so rarely hear it from anyone when they discuss unions in this country. There is way more global competition now than there was then. You cannot have a discussion about unions in this country without discussing global competition. And that's exactly what I'm about to do because I don't have the time. So, all that being said, how does this relate to Amazon? Is the perceived need for a union at Amazon because of poor working conditions, low pay, unsafe working conditions, or is the union push because Amazon is super rich and that just pisses people off? Christian Smalls, the young man who spearheaded the now successful push for a union at the location in Staten Island, said in an interview with CNN Business, some of the demands would be, some of the demands would include higher pay, better job security, better working conditions, longer breaks, making warehouse workers shareholders again, and covering the cost of transportation to and from the facilities. Now, higher pay. Yeah, sure. Who doesn't want to make more money? It would seem some Amazon workers say the pay is okay. Some say no. As I said, back to that website I talked about, that Career Builder website. Some people say the pay is fine. Some people say no. But for the most part, who doesn't want higher pay? Better job security. Now, this is always a scary one with me with unions, because when I hear better job security with unions, I hear you can't fire me no matter what I do. I could stumble into work drunk, naked, and you can't fire me because I'm in the union. So I don't know if this refers to that or if better job security refers to a safer work environment. There was a lot of criticism of Amazon during the pandemic for not taking enough steps to ensure worker safety. But come on. Even the most cynical person could see how difficult it would be for any company with thousands of workers at any given location to do much aside from shutting down to protect workers from a highly transmissible virus. So that's a tough one. Now, as far as a safe workplace in general, is Amazon violating federal or state laws? Are they being fined for violations associated with unsafe working conditions? With a quick search, I could find one such fine of $60,000 in Washington state, I believe it was. There are plenty of complaints, but not a lot of government intervention. And I'm not 100% sure, but facilities as large as the Amazon facilities may even have some government officials on site that oversee safety conditions. So, next on the list, better working conditions. Listen, there are people who work at home who want better working conditions. So that's such a general demand. How do you even address it without getting into and understanding the specifics? I asked, are the working conditions at Amazon the worst in the industry? Do they have federal and state regulators stepping in because of poor working conditions? Or are they just the richest and easiest target? Longer breaks. I've heard this one more than I would expect to. People wanting longer breaks at Amazon. Now listen, to the best of my knowledge, Amazon has a hiring process. If you work for Amazon, if you have worked for Amazon, please message me on Twitter, on Instagram, and let me know if I'm wrong about this. I keep all the messages, as far as your name's private. You don't have to worry about, me outing you. Anytime anyone messages me, your name will be kept private. But I'm going to assume Amazon doesn't go out into the community, snatch people off the street, and chain them to a workstation. I imagine people go to Amazon, ask for an application, fill it out, wait for a phone call, then go to an interview. In an interview, try at least somewhat to present themselves as someone Amazon would want to hire, get the job, get trained, and after all that, they decide the break room is too far away. They're going to quit. I don't know if this is something you really need to get a union involved in, but that's the most common reason I've heard for the longer breaks, the demand for longer breaks. The facilities are so huge by the time you get to the break room or you go to the bathroom or you get to your locker or you get to the time clock or you want to leave the facility to run out and grab something to eat, there just isn't enough time. By the time you do all this, your break is over, your lunch break is over, you just don't have enough time. It's a legitimate complaint, but a union demand? I don't know. I have to be perfectly honest with you. The first few demands, higher pay, working conditions, job security, all seem pretty standard. But the longer breaks, the warehouse workers wanting to be made shareholders, covering the cost of transportation to and from the facility. Before I heard those types of demands, those last three types of demands being made, I would have expected to hear, give us a 401k, give us paid vacation, give us paid time off, give us medical, dental, vision benefits. You didn't hear those as demands because Amazon already offers those things. They offer up to 20 weeks of paid paternal leave. They pay 95% of tuition in high demand fields, whether the jobs are at Amazon or another company. So they'll pay 95% of your tuition to go get educated to take a job somewhere else. They offer career skills, which trains hourly associates in writing resumes on how to communicate effectively and computer basics. So again, they'll train you to go get another job. I'm not trying to defend Amazon. I'm trying to be fair and give their side of it. They would tell you, hey, listen, we offer our associates a lot more than other players in the industry offer. So why are we the bad guy? I'm sure that's what they would say. We offer a lot. And based on the demands, being paid or being given money for transportation to and from work, that's not something you generally would find in a union contract for entry-level type workers. Again, remember, entry-level type workers. We got to shut out all the media stuff and keep all this stuff in perspective. With everything that Amazon is currently offering, the higher than the industry average in starting salary, the medical benefits, dental, vision from day one, a 401k plan from day one, tuition, paid tuition, career building skills. Now, give us higher pay, give us better working conditions, whatever that exactly means, pay us for transportation to and from work. I'm not saying unreasonable. I'm asking, unreasonable for the entry-level position? I mean, those are some things that I'm sure there are unions across the country would say, boy, we'd love a contract like that. So is it justified? Is it reasonable and justified? Or is it reasonable and justified for Amazon because they're the richest? And is that fair? Is that the way unions should be started? Not necessarily what's justified for the position, but justified because, hey, you need us. You need us. You're a big company, you're rich, and you need us. Amazon needs people. One of the reasons Amazon needs people is because they have such a negative image in the media. Now, you could say some of that is their fault, or you could say all of that's their fault if you want to, but some of it's their fault, some of it's not their fault. I've literally heard in the media, Amazon kills people. I've heard that in the media, in the mainstream real media. Amazon is killing people. I've heard it about the tragic tornado at one of their facilities that Amazon should have protected people. I heard it during the pandemic that Amazon was killing people. I've heard it when there was a tragic incident of someone having a heart attack at one of their facilities. I've heard in the media, Amazon is killing people. So is some of the negativity about Amazon overblown? Well, sure. Just talk to some of the no votes at the Staten Island facility where the union just got approved. The union vote was just successful. There were a ton of no votes there. It wasn't as one-sided as it was made out to be. There were a lot of people who voted no on the union. So it stands to reason that some of the negativity about Amazon is overblown. They probably are not the worst employer on the planet. So what's it about? Well, obviously, a lot of it has to do with Jeff Bezos. Jeff Bezos and his billions. Jeff Bezos going into space, along with the other billionaires. All these billionaires flying off into space while people here on Earth are starving. Why don't they do more for the people here on Earth, flying off into space? That's what a lot of this has to do with. A lot of it has to do with Bernie Sanders and his repeated complaint that the rich have too much and the poor have too little. The repeated complaint about income inequality. Bernie Sanders hammering away time after time at the point the three richest Americans now own more wealth than the bottom half of all Americans. Sometimes he switches it up. Sometimes it's the two richest Americans have more than the bottom 40%. Sometimes it's the three richest have more. Sometimes it's the 1%. But it's the point he hammers away at. He wrote about it in an op-ed for the Wall Street Journal. He talked about it on the debate stage. His quote on the debate stage or in the Wall Street Journal, I can't remember which one it was, but he made the point. The three richest Americans own more wealth, the three richest families own more wealth than the bottom half of people in this country. But he included a little extra there. His little extra he included there, and they will do anything to stop our agenda. That was the quote from Bernie Sanders. Who are those three richest Americans? Jeff Bezos, Bill Gates, and Warren Buffett. With a combined wealth of about $248 billion, they hold more than half the country at $245 billion. That's insane. About three people hold more wealth than about 165 million people. That's insane. Now, on the other hand, those three people are not exactly the Vladimir Putins of America. Two of the three, Gates and Buffett, are two of the most charitable men in the country, both committed to giving away at least half their wealth. Bezos also has given billions to charity. And Amazon lobbies Congress to increase the minimum wage. At least two of the three, I don't know about Bezos, but Buffett and Gates have said, sure, tax me more. I should pay more. They have no problem with paying more in taxes. These are the people that Bernie Sanders chooses to make the poster children of greed and unfairness. The union thing at Amazon feels a little too much like it's not about what's right, it's about what's popular. The negative attention on certain billionaires is not about what's right, it's about what's popular. How come the left never says, hey, Jay-Z and Beyonce need to start paying their fair share of taxes? They're billionaires. Why do we assume they do? How come the left never says, hey, Oprah needs to start paying her fair share of taxes? She's a billionaire. I don't know that Oprah gives a ton of money to charity. Other than buying those African girls and sending them to college, what has she done? And I know Jay-Z, Oprah, and Beyonce don't have the billions, the tens of billions that Bezos, Buffett, and Gates do. But again, it's about what's right, not popular. And everything Bernie Sanders says on the surface is usually mostly true. It's crazy that 3 people, sometimes even 2 people, should hold more wealth than 165 million people. It's crazy that multi-billion-dollar corporations pay 0 in taxes. Who could possibly disagree with that? The tax code is severely broken. It's crazy that people like you and I, and yes, I'm making assumptions here, it's crazy that we work harder but seem to make less. It's crazy that people who have worked all their lives and are retired have to make decisions between medicine or food. Now, I kid you not, I know people who are retired who work harder than people who are working. I know people who are out of work who work harder than people who are working. And that's where the progressive left loses me. And my guess is that's where they lose a lot of the country. Their singular focus, the more you have, the worse you must be. The more you have, the worse you must be. I don't have to defend Jeff Bezos to Bernie. I can say, Bernie, everything you think about Jeff Bezos is justified. But there are some people at the other end of the income spectrum that are behaving pretty badly too. Now, as I've said, I'm not here to toot my own horn. But I think I had one of the greatest political lines a few shows ago, since ask not what your country can do for you, when I said Democrats seem to want the word struggle to only apply to putting on a condom. Put on a condom. I say with all due respect and humility, put on a condom. If you have 28 cents in the bank, don't start a family. Then we will have less struggling families. The unfairness at the top of the income scale doesn't cancel out the unfairness at other levels of the income scale. It's unfair for some people in the country to be bearing the burden of this high inflation while others don't. The high gas prices, the high cost of groceries, the top 10% aren't affected greatly by it. The bottom 10% aren't affected greatly by it because they tend to be on assistance or not driving anywhere. So who is it crushing? It's crushing you and me, the people in the middle. And Bernie needs to recognize that. For political sake, Bernie needs to recognize that. And Bernie and the Democrats need to recognize unions do not help in areas of the country where there are no jobs. And the jobs won't come there, and the businesses will not come there if they think the unions will be soon to follow. Thanks for listening. That's the show. Now, you see, I feel like that show went too long. I'm probably going to have to make the next one shorter. That's what I have to do. Told you, if I do this 3 times a week, a couple of shows got to be short. It'll be the next one. The next one, I'll probably do the transgender subject. I can keep that short. I can get that out of the way quick. Visit the website, www.thecomparisongroup.com. Share the show, if you wouldn't mind. Apple Podcast, Spotify, Amazon Music, Google Podcast, anywhere you get podcast. I'll see you next time.